Welcome back to the Gee and Ursula Show. As we have been reporting, there have been COVID outbreaks in schools, and that has led to hundreds of students across the state to quarantine. It has also forced some school closures. And we saw a quote from State School Superintendent Chris Reykdal saying that all parents should be preparing for more closures this year, but he didn't anticipate a complete shutdown of all schools. So we wanted to invite the state superintendent to join us to talk about that a little bit more, and Chris Reykdal is on the line now. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
So talk to us about that. I feel like we're kind of paving the way to get parents prepared for the idea that we could be talking about vaccine mandates for students. Is that what the direction we're going?
Well, what we've been trying to say to folks is we're still in the middle of a vaccine or a pandemic, and people need to be prepared for all the twists and turns we've already experienced. We've got 1 million plus kids back in school. It's going really well, but it's super hard. A lot of contact tracing, exhausted staff with teaching, and they're going through all these public health metrics. And there are some places where local health jurisdictions have said, you know, we've got too many cases in a classroom, and maybe they've shut the classroom down for 7 days or 10 days or 14 days. Our message is we don't expect any of that stuff, but everyone should be prepared in case there is something in your classroom that would cause you to be out for your students to be out for a week or two. But so far, it's gone, pretty darn well. This question of student vaccine is a very different question, if that's what you were connecting.
Yes, absolutely. So where are you on that front? I know the Seattle School District has raised the idea that once it is approved for the younger ages or given emergency approval, that it could be a requirement, at least in that district.
Yeah, we're going to take a statewide approach on this, and it isn't going to be a district-by-district decision. What I have continued to tell the governor and public health officials, and I've been very public about, is this needs to go through the process that it would go through for any kid vaccine requirement. And we have lots of vaccines that are required of our students in the state, and we've been doing it for decades with really high compliance by parents, or they have an exemption process. And that means it gets full federal approval, not just emergency. It goes through a federal panel. Our local, and when I mean local, our state board of health in each of the 50 states then goes through a process. And my message is get on with that, expedite that, still go through it so that it's medical professionals and it's doctors and it's public health experts ultimately recommending this, and it's not an executive order. But that's where I'm at, and I think they will do that, and I think it's going to take quite a bit of time. So I still do not anticipate a student vaccine requirement this year. I do think people should be prepared for that next year, that it will go on the list with the other vaccine requirements that our students comply with.
Like it's been talked about, Washington is one of the 3 states that require masks in schools statewide. Question for you, how are things going? Like, here we are, we're in October of the school year. How has it been going throughout the state as far as with schools and or quarantine and closures? How's it been going, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the data, if all you do is look at empirical data, we obviously keep infection rates much lower in the state than other places that don't do this. We've kept our hospitalizations at half the national rate, and we've kept our mortalities per 100,000 at less than half of the national average. So it's working. And if I can just be totally candid with you all, students are amazing. And for 99.9% of them, this is not an issue. They want to be in school. They want to learn. They're adaptive and flexible. They're wearing their face coverings. We don't have a lot of issues with this. We have issues with adults who want to make it a political statement or an ideological statement, and I respect their right to do that. But in the classroom, this is not an issue. What is an issue, though, is contact tracing and spending incredible amounts of time and resources calling families when there is a positive case, because we have very strict protocols to make sure that all of the families of children who are in close contact get notified. And in many cases, you don't have to go quarantine or at least test to come back in. That's what's causing us a lot of time and energy, not the masking issue at all.
That's interesting. So in your opinion, with all of this, do you expect some pushback from maybe on the other side of the state, Eastern Washington?
Well, again, the masking's going really well there too, but there are certainly more folks with a conservative, set of values that don't think this is something government should require of students or staff, and so naturally there's a lot more energy about it over there. It is mostly it's played out. They've had their time. They've made their expression of interest, and obviously I respect that. It's got a little testy at some school board meetings over there because they think their school boards can undo a state requirement like a masking requirement or the vaccine requirement for adults at this point. School boards can't undo that, and so folks should really respect those locally elected officials. They are not the ones making that decision. What's obviously going to come next is, over the next year, folks are going to keep going down this process of the vaccine potentially being required for students. That will be the next thing that causes people to flare. And again, we'll respect the process, but my goodness, for 4 or 5 decades, we've had vaccine requirements for kids with a 90 to 93% compliance with very little political ideology wrapped around that. And it would be unfortunate if we did that this time.
Chris, we only have about a minute. I want you to talk about some of the positive things that are happening right now, given where we were 18 months ago and where we are today.
Yeah, I love that. A year ago and 8 months ago, very few students as a percentage were in person every day. We were kind of phasing back, but obviously dealing with, lots of technology imbalances in the state in terms of connectivity. What we have now is kids in school, and they're playing sports, and they're in leadership and dance and music and theater and art. And, they're loving the connection with their peers. It's hard, I'll be honest with you, for some little kids. They've been out for 18 months, and so we see social emotional issues. Like we're retraining them on respectful behavior and raising their hand and all of that. But that's just part of what school does as well, and it's going really well. It's on balance so much better in terms of a mental health standpoint for most kids. Not all of them. Some of them really liked being remote, and many districts have provided that opportunity. But that's the positive. Getting kids more consistent meals who need it, that's a positive. And, of course, we're now looking at, some data that's starting to come in on academics. And like the rest of the country, maybe 3 to 5 months of impact out of the 13 years we're going to have these kids. And so we've got plans in every district now to recover there, too. So it's really, really good if we could get more adults to focus their energy on what's best for students and helping students engage in the learning without the anxiety of the political environment. That would be better for kids as well.
We've got about 30 seconds, and this question came in from a listener. They said that they had heard that students will have to do standardized testing twice this year to make up for last year. Is that true?
Yeah, the federal government requires standardized testing in math, science, and English language arts. Our state was one that sought a waiver. We went at them last year and said, we don't want to test last year. Kids were remote. We were just coming back in the spring. We negotiated a long time with them. Ultimately, they said, nope, you must. So we kicked it into this fall. We did no standardized testing last year. We put it into the fall. We shrunk the assessment. So we're in that window right now. It's a shorter assessment. We will do this fall to assess learning for last year. And then we'll be back on our regular spring assessment schedule. So this year, we are assessing twice as required by the federal government because last year we didn't assess at all in a standardized way.
Wow. And they kind of have an idea that this will provide for a more accurate measurement, they believe?
Yeah. Again, we just didn't think last year was the right environment to measure whether students can really demonstrate their knowledge and understanding because they were all over the place in terms of where they were learning in their devices. This will be more accurate. It'll be more reliable. I still think we could have gotten it done with one assessment this year, but the feds did not agree with us, and so we're going to do a short one now and a regular one in the spring, and then keep asking this question of the validity and the importance of these assessments long term, which I think the whole world is starting to recognize has been over-relied upon for too many years.
Agree 100% on that. Chris Reykdal, Superintendent of Public Instruction, we really appreciate you. Thank you for your time.